How's it, everybody? Hope you guys are doing well. I've been asked many a times about my life story, about who I am, where I'm from, how I ended up being the programming manager of a commercial radio station in South Africa, how I even ended up in radio to start off with. So I've decided to record this bit of a video in the hope that it would inspire, especially the younger folk, in the hopes that it would, spark something so that you can just follow your passion. And I think at the end of the day, the lesson here is never give up on your hopes and your dreams. I grew up in Woodlands in Mitchells Plain, 7785. For those who don't know, Mitchells Plain is one of the highest crime-ridden areas, densely populated, gangsterism, drugs, abuse, just all kinds of crime in this like sort of populated area where people struggle to breathe because a lot of these houses was built in the apartheid era and was built on top of each other. And my story, I really am hoping that it would inspire some of the people. I have been asked this a few times. I've spoken about my life story a few times. And so here goes. So I was in matric towards the end of the 80s, in 89. In 1990, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. Back then, the elderly folks said, you got to do computers. So I got into computer data processing, hated it. I didn't do too badly, but I think I was just lazy and I was just exposed to things I've never been exposed to before. I was traveling train for the first time. I had to be responsible with my money to buy food. It was just too much. And I think if I had the time and I had the money, I would start organizations that would just upskill the youth and just prepare them. We have had, and I myself have had started a couple of projects where we did some life skills for youth, especially from Mitchells Plain and those kinds of areas. But I would like to do more, because simple things that you don't know of, all of a sudden you're faced with all these things and you've got to make up your mind and make the correct decision, because no one taught you that when you were younger. No one, all of a sudden you're independent and you've got to decide, am I going to hang out with the cool kids? Am I going to hang out with the guys who are studying? Am I going to hang out with the guys who are doing drugs? Am I going to be hanging out with the guys who don't go to class? And that's a daunting task, as small as it may seem for a 17 or 18-year-old. But anyway, I struggled in my first year financially. I think it was either the first or the second year of being at Pentech back then, which is now known as CPUT Belleville campus. I studied CDP, computer data processing, because computers is the way. Hated it, as I said. My dad lost his job and family was under pressure. I remember growing up, there were days when we had no food in our house and family members used to bring us food. I remember days when our electricity was off for like 2 weeks at a time. I remember days when our telephone, which was a big thing back then, was off for 3 months at a time. And this is why, personally, when I see people who are in need, especially who are close to me, there is absolutely no embarrassment. I am proud to say that I grew up poorly, or poor. So did my father, so did my grandfather. And there's absolutely no embarrassment. If you need help, you need to ask people. That's what I've learned. You get to that point in your life where it's so low that you have to reach out to people. I'm a little bit fortunate now because of my exposure that I've had over the years and working in the medium that I have and having my own blogging website and running events and things, that I get to know sort of influential people. So now I can call on people for like favors or whatever. But for those of you who don't be shy, don't be scared. Ask your family, ask your neighbor, ask your friend. And ask the right people. Don't ask the people who have ill intent. Ask the people who actually would help you. For those, just to come back to the Mitchells Plain story, my dad's family was thrown out of the beautiful, lush, leafy suburbs of Newlands. My mom's family was thrown out of the beautiful harbour town of Simonstown, and we ended up in Mitchells Plain. Now, I want to just expand and expound on that. And then my lesson here is for a lot of people who judge and assume stuff. Had I had my grandparents on the one side still up until today, or for the last decade or so, staying in Simonstown, had I had the other grandparents still staying in Newlands or connected, my father or my uncle bought their house, I buy the house from them, it would have put me at such an advantage. It would have put me at such an advantage. If you're looking at Newlands houses, they're going from, I don't know, anything between 4 and 8 and 12 million rand. Simonstown is even more, depending on the size. But we were thrown into the Cape Flats. We were thrown into a dry area with absolutely nothing. And I remember it was very bushy. When I was a kid, there was no roads. It was that white clay. So if it rained, it was clay all over the show. There was just sand. It was literal bush. When I grew up, I remember the things I remember vividly. There was bush where people used to go and hunt with their dogs and catch a rabbit and buck. That's where they moved us to. So when your parents and grandparents worked 10 kilometers away from where they stayed, they were uprooted, thrown away 40 kilometers away. Now you've got to pay the extra money to travel to where you work, which you never used to do before, to get back and forth. Anyway, so that is kind of just the lesson there. Don't ever just think that, you know, all people are the way they are because they are just like that. A lot of people are put into those situations, and I am one of them. I'm but one of hundreds and thousands of people who was put into that situation. Just imagine for a second, I still had my grandparents owning property in Simonstown. I still had my other grandparents owning property in Newlands. But now, parents' house is probably worth 800, 900,000 rand on the Cape Flats, in Woodlands, in Mitchell's Plain, where the value is going to probably keep on dropping because it's a crime-ridden area. To drive anywhere, because of the way it was built, to drive anywhere to Mitchell's Plain, you're in danger, because 90% of the time, that bloody road, Jake's Caravel, I think it's called now, used to be Vanguard Drive, the electricity is not working, the lights are not working, so it's dark, and God forbid you get stuck along the road. I remember there was one of the kids in our road who passed away because they killed him on that road. So anyway, back to my story about how I got into radio and so on. So when I was second year, I needed money. We had no money. My dad lost his job, and I remember having to ask my cousin for cash. And I've still, up until today, I've always messaged her, and I've had this discussion with her saying, thank you, thanks so much for giving me that cash, you know. And I mean, again, that's what family is for. It was such a struggle. It was a struggle when, you know, you didn't have electricity in the house, you didn't have, you know, enough money to pay the bill, you had debt, etc., etc. So eventually I needed to get a job because I had to drop out of my studies, besides the fact that I hated it. I had to drop out because I needed to earn money for the house, and I worked at a couple of places. Now, again, my memory is not that good, so I'm probably going to miss out something or get the timing wrong, but I worked on the building site for a very long time. So I worked with a bunch of guys, their three brothers and their dad, on the building site, and both of them, I know two of the brothers I'm very close to two of the brothers, and they're in completely different fields, you know, the ones at MWeb and the ones at the Nell, or whatever the case may be, but they are such talented men that they can actually strike up you know, trusses for roofs. And that what we used to do, we used to work on the building site, you know, slutting up roofs and trusses and stuff like that. I also used to work for a carpenter for a short while. I worked with my uncle and family on the building site as a laborer, and one of the biggest lessons from that, I remember one day I was complaining because I was working so hard, and I said to my uncle, ja, wat die mens werk so hard en is 30 rand. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, but it's 30 rand. And that's all he needed to say. And it made me put things into perspective. And I was like, he's right, you know. I needed to work for my money. Whether it was 30 rand or 3,000 rand, that is the mantra. That is what I live by. I work 130%, 150% I give for my work, even though I'm busy with other projects or not. My work is where my, as we say, rizik, your blessing is from, and that's what I've always done. So I've worked on the building site as a laborer, mixing tagga, carrying bricks. I've done all of that stuff for a very long time. Like I said, work with carpenters, and then for a very long time, I also worked in the factory. And while working in the factory, I became the safety officer, which is such a difficult job because you're working with a bunch of grown men. A lot of them honestly, some of them were ex-criminals. majority or all of them came from really poor areas where there is a criminal mind and there is just violence and stuff like that. But I always respected them, and they always respected me. And I think that for me there was the lesson again. Irrespective of, those guys, I remember lunchtime most of the time they would go around the corner and have their smoke. When there was a party, the guys would drink and they would get so drunk that I was the one, because at the end of the year, back then, 4,000 rand was a lot of money. That's not your pay. That's your pay plus 2 or 3 extra weeks plus a bonus, and you go with 4,000 rand. And I was the guy that took their money, because at this stage it's party time and they all had their drinks and stuff. I was the one that went up to them, asked them for their money, took their money, folded it up, put sellotape around it, and tied it inside their overall, or close to their small pants or whatever, and said, remember, your money's there. So when you go home tonight or later on, you take the train, remember, your money is there, kind of a thing, I think the respect was always there. I worked with guys who've come out of prison. I worked with guys who had tattoos because they came back from the system. I also remember working with guys who it was natural for them to do drugs. Back then it was not just taha, but it was what's it called, mandrax or buttons. And these are grown men who needed to operate machinery. And I remember on many occasions I would help the machine operator start the machine, because there were blades that would turn and it could cut your finger or your hand, and they would just be in a zone, and I would help them sort it out. And that was a natural thing. It was just how it was. But again, I understand where people like this come from, and understand their situations, and understand drug is the escapism. Drug is the thing that takes them away, it makes them high, and whatever. And I've seen all of that firsthand. I also do remember working with guys, and I always call them full-blown alcoholics, because if we had to clock in at 7 o'clock, which is the clocking system, there were guys that would take the first train out of Mitchell's Plain. I used to work in Epping, so it's opposite Bonteheuwel, and they would take the first or the second train out of Mitchell's Plain, get off about an hour or so before they start working, go to the smokkelhuis, go and drink. I swear to God, this is the honest truth. I still see some of these people today. Go to the smokkelhuis, have their drinks, come to work, obviously inebriated, but not that bad. But we could all see them, we could all smell, and back then it was just, I don't know, let's just ignore it, or let's just keep on going, or whatever the case may be. They just had a bit of a dope in, and they would work. And then 10 o'clock for tea time, the one guy would take whoever had a bicycle and go back and buy another bottle. Lunchtime, they would finish the bottle. Some of them would smoke the mandrax with the drinks, or it'll be separate thing. 5 o'clock, we would clock out, leave. I would be home every night around about 5 past 6, depending on the train and the taxi that I would take home. And a lot of them would come home after 8, after 9, almost every night, because they went back to the smokkelhuis to go and drink. And this was the kind of life I was exposed to. Not once did I judge, because I can't. A, I'm not God. And B, you do not understand these people's situations. And I think many times when I speak to the youth, or even adults, we are so quick to judge. But you need to understand why they are in that situation. You need to understand what is normal for them. You need to understand the environment they are in, which leads to it. And a lot of people will disagree with me. But until you've been there, where I've been, what I've seen, then you will understand. So I think a lot of privileged people, irrespective of color right now, but I think a lot of privileged people would look down to Cham mentality and the Cham people, and they blah blah blah, and they understand why. Have a conversation with people like that. You will see how intellectual they are, you will see how passionate they are, but something has taken it away, and the environment has molded them into what they've become, sadly. It is also one of the things that I'm hoping, once I'm sorted and have more cash and whatever, to go in and have more projects for especially young boys, so that they can become the adult men who are the examples for everyone else. Anyway, so worked in the factory for a long time, and I was talking about becoming a health and safety officer. And after a while, I just gave up because you cannot tell grown men 6-7 times, listen, wear your mask when you are using that powder, if they have not been wearing their masks for the last 5 or 3 or 10 years they've been working there. Who are you to tell me? And it's itchy and whatever. And all of a sudden you just go like, you know what? I now got a job to do. There's the description. This is the health and safety rules. But if they don't want to do it, what else can you do? You know, that kind of a thing. While working in the factory, I've always had like a bit of an entrepreneurial skill. I've always had, and I think it comes from my grandfather, my father. We grew up, my dad was a broker, my grandfather was a broker. Quick story about my grandfather. So, and I found this out last week because I was spending time with my dad, who was very ill. My grandfather fought in the war. And as a colored person in the, I don't know if they were called the colored corps or Cape Corps, whatever they were called, they were promised a house, a horse and cart, and a bicycle. When the war was over, this is what they got. So my grandfather fought for this country, shot and fought with other people, lost men along the way. You know that saying, we lost a lot of men along the way? He literally lost his friends and men along the way, was promised something, and when they came back, they were like, well, nah, we lied. Again, putting people at a disadvantage. Again, understand, back in the 1920s or 30s or whatever year, my dad was born in 39, so let's call it 30s. Imagine you come back, there's a house for you, whether it's in Newlands or Lansdowne or wherever the case may be, because back then there wasn't really a Cape Flats. There's a horse and cart and there's a bicycle. Value. You come back, nothing. My father said to me last week, and I didn't know this, that people of color, or the colored people, were just given a letter, you must move out. Group Areas Act, blah, 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 all that other bullshit. And you had to leave. And he said my grandfather was one of the people who fought and said, ek het gebaklei vir die land. Ek gaan nie die weg nie. And he fought and fought and fought. And when they eventually moved him, they moved him to Western Lansdowne area as opposed to all the other places that people moved to, which I think, I'm assuming, is the Cape Flats kinds of areas, Bridgetowns and the Mitchells Plains and places like that. So yeah, just an interesting story about my grandfather. Again, I'm just trying to put you into perspective here about the advantage and disadvantage. And when people talk about privilege, this is the privilege. When you take that away from one generation, it affects everybody else. If somebody's got R1 million now and he invests it and puts it into stocks and buildings and businesses or whatever, by the time his great-grandkids come, they are all sorted. We never had that. We were always working 10 steps behind trying to catch up. Anyway, nonetheless. So at the factory, I've always had a passion. I've always been a fairly creative person. My friends will tell you this. I used to write plays. I used to act in plays. I used to write songs. My dad was a singer. My mom sings. All my family sings. I can't sing. But I used to write plays, and we used to partake in high school talent shows. We were invited to inter-school, high school talent shows, and I actually won Best Actor that one year. We were invited to like charity organizations, old age homes, and all those kinds of things. Anyway, so I've always been somebody that's been really creative. I've always come up with ideas, and I used to draw and blah, 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 blah. And while working, I was coming back to the entrepreneurial thing, but while working in the factory, I discovered there was a hi-fi corporation that opened. It's no longer there. I think it's in Rondebosch, whatever. And I took the bus because I was always fascinated with all these kind of gadgets and things, you know. And I bought me a Walkman. And I think I paid something like $49.99 for this Walkman, which is quite. So Walkman at school, whatever. And I used to always listen to music while working in the factory. When I went back, there was the same one, but a brand new model with equalizer, and it had a radio for like, I don't know, 89 Rand or it was 100 Rand. I then saved up cash. And week by week, I would go in there, buy one, and sell it to the guys in the factory for $150. I made $50 of each Walkman. So whenever I had the cash, I would go in, I would buy one or two, come back, sell it to them. They would pay me 50 Rand a week. I'd make that extra 50 Rand and buy another and buy another. And that's kind of how the entrepreneurial thing used to be a thing. But the Walkman, the interesting story about this Walkman, the second one with the radio, is that I used to work with the headphones in, and to the point where, just before I became safety officer, obviously, to the point where the guy in charge is like, no more Walkman, because everybody's walking around with Walkman and listening to radio and stuff where, they shouldn't be, because they should be working. But the interesting story about that is one day I've always loved radio. I've loved music, like I'm saying, creative, artsy, blah, blah, blah. I loved music and loved radio, from Springbok Radio to Radio Good Hope, to all of those kinds of stuff that we used to listen to. And I used to flip channels. I never used to stay on just one station, flip channels. And then all of a sudden I hear this community radio station. Now, this community radio station was in Ottery. I'm in Pontyville or Epping, listening to the station. And they were called C-flat radio. Cleverly C-flat as in the musical notes C-flat, but also C-flat for Cape Flats. And then one day I hear this ad, which I now know is a promo, which said, do you want to work in radio? Are you keen to work in radio? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, radio factory, I'd rather work in radio. And I remember they, excuse me, I remember they broadcasted from 2 a.m. in the morning until 2 p.m. And then Bush Radio on 89.5 would broadcast from 2 p.m. until 2 a.m. So we shared a frequency, I say we, but they shared a frequency with them on 89.5. And this particular Saturday, I either took a taxi or my friends dropped me. I think it was a taxi. And I rocked up at C-flat radio, and there were people coming out. There was 3 or 4 of them, and they were just locking up. So it was probably at like 10 to 2 or 10 past 2, whatever the case, because now they're done, so they're locking up. So I'm like, hi, I heard the ad in the radio. Here's my CV, blah, blah. I spruced up my CV. All I ever did was work in a freaking factory, guys. I worked in a factory. I worked on the building site. I worked with a carpenter. But I made my CV seem so cool, because I loved radio and I was passionate about artsy stuff and cultural stuff. And I put all of that in, etc. Anyway, about a few days later, I get a phone call. And at this stage, by the way, I just remembered now, at this stage, I was probably retrenched about 6 times in the factory. So I kept on being retrenched in the factory. Our factory used to work with reams of paper, huge, hundreds and kilos of paper. It goes into machines, and then all of a sudden there was a shortage, or the paper had to come from Durban, and it would take another 7 days, and then for 7 days you're at home because there is no paper. Then a truckload comes, you finish the paper in 2 or 3 days, then you again have no work. And this was kind of how we always ended up working on short time, or being retrenched, which we eventually were. And if I can just quickly go back to the retrenched thing, I remember going in, I think I went twice. So the first time, because you listen to what the guys say, and they're the ones with the experience, work in the factory, and that you listen to what they're saying about, no, you have to go into the unemployment office, you have to sign, and you'll get your check. So first month, you'll get, like, let's call it 312 Rand, and then the next month you'll get 218 Rand, and then the third month you'll get 160 Rand. So it gets less as time goes by. And I remember doing this for the first, I think I did it for all 3 months. In the meanwhile, still looking for a job. I had no experience, guys. I just worked in a freaking factory. But I knew this is not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I have absolutely the biggest respect for everybody that does any kind of job, because I know I've been there. I've been a boyke, as they call it, on the building site, and I've worked on the building site. I've worked in the factory. I know what it's like to sit at the back of the bucket, and it's ice cold, and it's past 6 in the morning, and you need to go to work, and the tools are ice cold, and you're frozen. I know what it's like when it's 34 degrees in the sun, and you have to be on top of a roof, laying trusses and knocking in and holding till your arms turn water, as they say. I know what it's like. So I have the biggest respect for anybody that does any kind of labor, because I did that. Anyway, what was my point here? So I go into, sign this unemployment, and the next time I was retrenched, I had to go back. So I go back, and it's like just some sort of a vision. It was in slow motion. I looked around the room, and I realized that everybody in this room, was probably about 50 to 100 men, were old people. They were older than me. Yeah, I was 24, 25 or whatever, 23. I can't even remember how old I was back then. And I was like, no, man, this is not right. This is not going to be your future, buddy. This is the last time you're ever coming. And I think I turned around and I left. And I went back and I sorted out my CV. I passed it on. I made phone calls. as I have been doing for the longest time. But this time I was just more determined. I was more determined to get out of that situation because I did not want to be in that situation. I did not want to be one of that 50 or 100 grown-ass men who's standing there waiting on their money that they work for to feed their families. No disrespect, but for me, at that moment in time, that's not what I wanted. I walked away and I pushed and forced myself to get a job. Excuse me. So, doing odd jobs here and there, blah, blah, blah. Then I get a phone call from C-Flat Radio. Hi there, you Baydu, we've got your CV. Please would you come and see us? Luckily again, I was retrenched, so I could go in. I wasn't going to lose any cash. I go in, and there were 3 of us. I think the guy's name was Andile, and there was a young lady called Fatima, and Fatima and I are still friends up until today, and then myself. And they interviewed us at this community radio station, and they asked us various kinds of questions, why do you want to do it? What's your passion? None of us had any experience, obviously. We were all from the Cape Flats, and we just wanted to be part of this experience. And at the end of the interview, the guy, I think his name was Jeff, at the end of it, he said to us, there's one thing that I admire about all 3 of you, is none of you said, I want to be a DJ and I want to be famous and I want to be on air. Because this is a community radio station. It's not about that. It's about the community. So it's about helping the community. It's about getting interviews, talking to experts that could help the community. It's about giving advice to community. And that is what the station is about. Anyway, excuse me, fast forward to them showing us around this little building and whatever. So obviously the big thing is now they take us into the studio. They are walking to the studio, the 3 of us with the people who are showing us around. And there's Hilton Carlson, who's still a buddy of mine on my Facebook. And Hilton is presenting a show. And he's like, hey, how's it? This is now past 1 or something. And he says, would any of you like to read out the messages that we've been receiving? So back then it used to be faxes or letters. And without hesitation, and I don't know why or how, I said, I will. And I will never forget that feeling. It is that exact same feeling every time I do something that's good for my radio station, or I come up with a creative idea. I get that feeling. He says to me, now cool, there you go. And he hands me a couple of faxes. He tells me to put on the headphones or the cans, as they are known, speaking to the microphone. My first time, never been in the radio station, never spoke on the microphone. And I read those messages with so much passion, because right there and then I knew this is what I wanted to do. This is where I wanted to be. Read it, it was very nice meeting them and whatever. It turns out they were looking for people to volunteer at the radio station. They didn't have any money. It's a community radio station. And they would only pay us taxi fare. Because I came from Mitchell's Plain, I had to drive all the way to Ottery, so they would pay me a monthly or a weekly taxi fare kind of thing. So I go back home to my parents after that day, and I say to them, I was still living with them, and I said to them, I found what I wanted to do. I'm actually getting goosebumps while telling you this. I said to my parents, I found what I wanted to do. And I said to them, I'm not going to get paid. There's no money involved. All I need now is the experience. I hope you're going to support me. And my parents always have always supported my sister and I. And they said, yeah, go ahead. Do what you have to do. And I was asked to come in early in the morning, I think around about 5:30, to produce for a couple of DJs. But I remember, I think it was Gershwin Could See back then, whose show was on 6 to 9. And then I was asked if I was keen, because I used to do dedications with a guy called Zwai Piccoli, who's from the Eastern Cape. If I would do dedications between 1 and 2, that was my time on air, So yes, I was the producer, and I would chirp in and maybe read traffic or weather or news or whatever the case may be. But my time was me and Zwai between 1 and 2, and just have a lekker time with the people calling in for their dedications, and we played their songs. And back then it was Kwaito, and Kwaito was the big thing, and we would just bang Kwaito hits after Kwaito hits, And I did that for a month, and then I got called in, working for free, obviously. And I got called in, and they said to me, Baydu, there's a guy who's leaving, and he his position is available. Excuse me, this has got the story wrong. When I started there, I was just helping out as a volunteer. When he left, I became the producer of the breakfast show, and then I decided to stay on for to do the dedications until 2. There were probably 90% of the time I left at 5 o'clock. Why? A, I was passionate, B, I was driven, and C, I needed to learn as much as I could. I learned everything in radio, as much as I could from a little community radio station. I learned absolutely everything. How to do music, how to compile music, how to compile news, how to read sport, how to compile sport, how does the advertising work, how does the production work, how do you speak on air, everything, marketing, alles. And that drive, for me, is, in my opinion, the reason why I am where I am today. Because for me, the drive was to get out of that situation I was in, working in the building site, working in a factory, taking a train, etc. And now something that I'm passionate about, something that I love, radio, music, people, interviewing celebrities. It was just flipping amazing, man. And I just needed more and more, and I kept on learning. And again, that is one of the biggest drivers for me, and that is one of the biggest reasons why, in my opinion, I have become successful in those steps leading up to where I am today, because I wanted to learn. I needed the experience, and I sponged off everyone else's skills around me. Obviously, there were some tough times and trying times, but we pushed through until we did what we needed to do. Then one day I get called into the office, and no, I wasn't called in the office yet. Someone said to me, they phoned me or they mentioned to me, listen, the lady who's doing, hold on, I got the story wrong. I was called into the office, sorry, I was called into the office, and I was told, Baydu, we'd like to give you your own show. 2 hours, 9 to 11, I called it CTI 2 hours, Cape Town in 2 hours. 9 to 11, I had to do the show, because 6 to 9 is a breakfast show, 9 to 11 I did my show, 11 to whatever was the next person, and then 1 to 2 obviously the dedications. And I was like, of course. And Zwai Pikoli, who's the guy I did the music with and the dedications with in the afternoon, he was my producer. So we made sure, as in with most community radio stations, like the Mondays about women, the Tuesdays about kids, the Wednesdays, whatever the case may be, you talk about community issues and you talk about finances, and you just get into that community vibe. And this is why I have so much respect for community radio. They've got a function. They are, in my opinion, they're not there to compete and compete with commercial radio stations. They are there because they have a function. They are there to inform and educate the people of the community. And this is what we did. We did it so well, and we kept on going. And then obviously I take a break, 1 o'clock is dedications, and then I have a lekker time with Zwai, and that was that. Then this is where the phone call comes in. So then I get a phone call, I get called into the office, and I was told, at this stage, a lady called Shelley Knight was doing the breakfast show, 6 to 9. Shelley had to go in for an op or something. She had a procedure or something, and they asked me if I didn't want to stand in 6 to 9. So I'm like, breakfast? Okay. I stood in 6 to 9, and I think I brought my own vibe. Shelley and I were different presenters back in the day. Shelley was very much skilled in, she was very intellectual, so her style of radio was very much like, higher learning, and she asked the proper questions. And when Baydu comes along, it's all just about, it's vibe, it's funk, it's cool, it's fast, let's move next. And I think I never molded myself on any presenter as a lot of DJs or radio presenters do nowadays, or have been doing. I've never done that. I've always respected a lot of presenters, but I never wanted to be like them, until one day I stood in and Pumzile, who happened to hooked up with a few years ago in Port Elizabeth, where he became the program manager of Shlobo Inene, and I was the program manager of Algo FM, and we're in the same city together. And he made the comment, and he said like, oh, that is C-Flat's very own Mark Gilman. And I was like, okay. But I understood what he meant. It was just, my energy was just pacey. And I think people like that. And eventually Shelley comes back, and Shelley says to me, she says, you know what? I think the 6 to 9 show suits you better. I think we should swap. And it was still Langdar Nani management calls us in and says, Baydu, people have been raving about you. There's been lots of phone calls, and I think the email started, and there's been a couple of faxes that have come through. They absolutely love you in the morning. They love your style. They love your energy. We want you to do breakfast. So I ended up doing breakfast there for a long time. Just to backtrack, when I was offered the gig to become the producer and work in the afternoon, when that guy left, I was paid 800 Rand. So from no money to 800 Rand. And back then, for me, that 800 Rand was a lifesaver, because I had a family back home that I needed to give money to. I'm still old school, and we needed to pay for our debts and whatever. And that 800 Rand needed to work for me. Towards the end of C-Flat, there was financial issues and problems. And towards the end, I think it was in 99 or 2000 or 99, 31st of December, we tried to raise money in the radiothon. We didn't raise enough, and the station closed. It was such a sad day. We were all there. I think it was a Saturday. We were all there. We all said our last farewells and goodbyes to the listeners. I remember there was a guy called Roscoe. Is it Roman? Anyway, his name was Roscoe Paul. Roscoe comes in with his guitar, and we sang all these songs, and we left there at like 3 o'clock or whatever in the afternoon. But it was a sad day for me when that happened, because now all of a sudden I again was unemployed. I had nowhere to go. My passion that I had, my drive that I had, all of a sudden was taken away from me, and I didn't know what to do. I was absolutely lost. I think I was approached by the other community radio station. Yeah, I was. I remember now. Zane, who's passed away. I remember he called me in and he asked me. I was at Bush Radio. Used to be, because there was lots of American sponsors that pushed money into Bush Radio, because it was a training ground. So a lot of community radio stations, and that's why a lot of people who are famous today or on radio or TV today, I've met them because they were skippies like me at Bush Radio, and we would learn things like audio stuff, or we would learn things about interviewing skills. And one of the things I did there was elections, the 94 elections, and we were preparing for the elections and smaller elections and stuff like that. So we went there for all these kinds of training and things. Anyway, and I remember he called me in one day while I was taking a break. It was like, "Are you happy there? Don't you want to come and work?" I said, no, like I'm happy and I'm fine and whatever. Maybe I should have taken the job at Bush Radio, actually. I still would have been employed. Anyway, fast forward to C-Flat Radio closing. In this time, and this is the other lesson for those who are in radio, in this time, I've learned each and every skill available in radio. I've mastered it. I was the guy who would stand in for whoever's, if the music person is ill, if the sound engineer is ill, I would do the show. I would, stand in for them, etc. And in this time of not having any work, I've already compiled a beautiful CV that I've typed up. But not only that, when I had spare time in the studio, I would record my own, I would package my own demo. So I had my own cassette. I would record my shows, take it home with me. Back then it was a cassette. Back then it was a cassette. I would take it home and edit it, whatever. And then I had my demo. I had my CV and I had my demo. So now I sat with 3 or 4 demos, and I had nowhere to go. I started doing odd jobs. I remember sending demo to ETV back then, because they just started and they were fairly new, or they just started and they were fairly new. I sent it to Good Hope FM, because that's where every person of color back then at my age wanted to work at. And then there was P4 Radio, which is now Heart FM, sent it to them. And the one radio station I didn't send it to was KFM. Understand, when I grew up, KFM was a radio contray that turned to KFM. It was old school, it was Afrikaans, it was Boer musiek, Creedence Clearwater Revival. I don't know, I don't think that's for me, Anyway, fast forward to doing odd jobs. I ended up working at a call center for Telkom for a few days. I ended up working, I was with an agency. I ended up working at, I think it's SRG House, Truett's building. I think they're still there in town. And on my last day at SRG House, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take my demo and my CV with me. And when it's lunchtime, I'm going to go and find this bloody KFM, and I'm going to drop off my CV at KFM. Last day. Back then, look at the phone book, this is the address, whatever. I take a run. I've only got 45 minutes or an hour, and I run looking for this place. It was in Strand Street, 90 Strand Street. I know this because I worked there for a long time. I remember coming in out of breath, excuse me, asking the security guard, hey, is KFM here? He says, yep, just signing there on the 5th floor. I'm like, dude, I don't have time. I have to get back to work. So he says, well, I can't take your demo or your package because you need to sign in and give it to someone. So I'm like, is there no, and he stops and he points to the lady across, and there was a bench, and there were two ladies having a chat. And then he said, why don't you ask that lady? She worked, she's a cleaning lady there. Never forget, Auntie Margie. Auntie Margie and I became the greatest friends. I went to this lady. I took my envelope with my cassette and my CV, and I gave it to this lady, who I later found out was Auntie Margie, who lives in Heinz Park, who used to live in Heinz Park. And I gave it to her. I said, asseblief Tannie, kan u dit tyd gee vir die mense upstairs or whatever. She dropped it off. I then, days gone by, whatever. I remember I had to go to the dentist when, I came from the dentist the day before. The next day I was all swollen. And I get a phone call. Mom's like, Baydu, there's someone on the phone for you. Okay. Baydu, hello. Hi there, it's Kevin Savage. I was like, what? The Kevin Savage? Like the guy who does the top billing voices? Kevin Savage? The guy who's on TV? How's it, Kevin? Putting on my very confident voice. And Kevin's like, listen, we've received your demo. We'd love for you to come in to do a voice test. Now, understand, when I was, another lesson for the radio people, when I was at C-Flat Radio, I had a certain style. I was very raw, and, I was that. I was not trained, I was never trained vocally to speak proper and enunciate all the words correctly when you speak and you pull your face, and none of that. I was just raw, I was a boykie from the Cape Flats, and this was my style, and this is what I did. So I'm like, okay, cool. When you need me to come in? And it's like tomorrow, whenever. And I'm like, okay, I'm there. Put the phone down. Still a bit of a swollen. It's like, please let my face just stop swelling. I go in, and there's Kevin Savage and a guy called Ricardo, whom I've worked with for the longest time. Ricardo eventually left KFM to go work at Group's Sound Studios, I think they're called, with Nigel Pearson, those kinds of guys, a sound engineer. And there they are, and like he introduces himself, Kevin now, and he's telling me about what's happened. So what happened was, another guy who's now my friend, called Bobby Brown, left KFM to go work for Cape Talk. Bobby Brown, Aidan Thomas, those are all guys who used to work at KFM's newsroom before they became DJs. So I'm like, okay, 3 to 6 early in the morning on a Friday, 3 to 6 early in the morning on a Saturday. You think I was going to say no to KFM? I think I got paid, was it 50 Rand or 150 Rand per hour? I had no transport. I had no car. I had absolutely no way of getting to town at past 2 a.m. in the morning. There was no Uber, there was no Bolt, there was no taxis. I had no idea, but I said, I'm keen. They took me for the voice test. He says he loved it. I think Kevin was just like, I just need to fill this bloody spot. And this is the guy. Let's just take him because somebody needs to talk on the radio or whatever. And that's what happened. And that's how I got the gig at KFM. I remember a lady called Arinda Claasen, still a good friend of mine right now. And Arinda and some of the other guys I know run what are they called? Spur. Oh, no kan ek die naam kom nie. Spur's got their own radio station. Taste FM. Taste for life. Taste FM. So Arinda actually runs Taste FM. Arinda used to do 12 to 3 or 9 to 12. I think she did 12 to 3. And Arinda was tasked to train Baydu Adams. It was the Tuesday. I remember it was Tuesday. It was Valentine's Day. And I had to go on air literally the Friday night into the Saturday morning. So I had 3 days to learn the system, see what she was doing, pushing the buttons, and I learned so quickly. Understand, I came from a radio station where we had to physically find the CDs, open the tray, put the CD in, close the tray, skip to number 15, wait for it to start playing, and pause. And then when you're ready to talk, and then you press the button, and then the song starts. Now all of a sudden I'm at KFM and there's this massive studios and so much people and computers everywhere, bloody monitors everywhere. This does this and this does that. And I had to learn all of that within days, guys. I'll not forget. My eyes just kept on going. It just kept on going. Whatever she was doing, and Miranda's one of the best teachers you'll ever find in radio. Miranda, shout out to you. So at one stage, Miranda was a smoker. So we had the KFM had their studio, and behind the studio was the production studio where I was recorded at with Kevin Savage. Right behind that is a little smoker's room, but they all have glass windows so you can see right through. And then next to that is the reception area, basically. So Miranda says, I just want to go for a smoke break. Would you mind mixing the next 2 songs for me? Nou, ek weet hoekom Miranda nou skielik 'n smoke break op aan. En ek weet Miranda gaan nou luister. I did those mixes as smoothly as they could be. And she came back and she was like, nice, not bad for the first time, you know. That was the one thing. Friday comes, there was a guy called Theo Issa, who many people know as Theo on the Throne from RTFM. So Theo did the 12 to 3 show. Friday and Saturday, 12 in the nacht tot 3 uur. And Theo was tasked on my very first show to sit with me the entire show, to see how I operate and am I okay and whatever. That was his job. Within 20 minutes, Theo was like, oh, you can do this, I don't need to be here. And Theo left, I think 30 minutes or 40 minutes later, because I learned so much and I just wanted it so much. I just wanted this so much that I didn't want to mess it up. I didn't want to mess it up, and I couldn't afford to mess it up, that I gave it 150%, and I gave it my all. I would make sure that the song mixes into the other song. There was no clashing of lyrics. There was no KFM, and then the song comes, it's KFM. Then the song comes in. Everything was just so smooth. I literally wrote down my notes. A lot of people don't know this about jocks, because as you get older and as you become more professional and you're used to it, you don't need to make notes, but especially at the start. And by the way, a lot of professional people today still make notes because you need a guideline. The guys who don't make the notes are the guys that normally sound like this. And it's just gone 20 minutes after 3 o'clock right here on blah, blah, blah FM. My name is Baydu. I'm with you. So, it's a lovely day in the Cape, blah, blah, blah. And then this starts happening. And I saw the other day that there was 3 of them. The started happening. You know, that guy didn't prepare. So I started preparing my notes and stuff, and I knew what I was going to speak about and whatever. And within 40 minutes, when Theo said, like, I'm out of here, you're sorted. And I did my show. What happens with that then is Monday you come in, you have to do listening sessions, as I do with my jocks, or most program managers do with their jocks. And they listen to you and they criticize you. They tell you what's wrong, what's right. This is too fast, this is too slow. Try this, have one thought at a time, whatever. There's a whole psyche about radio, about how you do presenting. Some people say it's old school. Some people say, some people, believe that's the law. But you're the skipper, you're learning from people, and you have to take the advice and you have to put it in here and implement it. And that's the only way you could grow. How did I get to work? I would hang out with my cousins until past 12, and then they would drop me at the building. I would set my alarm or tell Theo to wake me up. How many times I fell asleep under that huge boardroom table at KFM, Lord only knows. How many times when I eventually had my car, I would sleep in my car before my show started. How many times, here's another interesting story that you're going to like. One of the first guys I worked with a lot of guys who thankfully have become successful in the industry, and I don't want to mention all the names because there's too much to mention. But one guy I'm going to give a shout out to is Bradley Knight. Bradley is one of the most cool and calm, collected guys I know, and one of the most respected guys in radio that I know. Here's the cool thing about Bradley. Bradley, when I joined C-Flat, he was one of the very first people to get a gig at a commercial radio station. He was given the gig at Good Hope FM. And it was, oh my goodness, Bradley said, Good Hope. What? Then I was, in my group, I was the second one to be. So there was Bradley Knight and there was Baydu Adams. More or less at the same time at 2 opposing radio stations. Bradley's show was 2 a.m. until 6 a.m. Baydu's show was 3 a.m. until 6 a.m. And you know how many times Bradley picked me up after 1 to take me through to work? And I'm today still eternally grateful for that. Bradley lived in, what was the place called? London Village, I think it's called, which is about 3 or so kilometers away from where I stayed in Woodlands. So Bradley would pick me up, or if he couldn't, I would make a plan, drop me off in Strand Street. I would go and sleep there for an hour and a bit. He would go do his show in Sea Point. Done with his show at 6 o'clock on a Saturday or a Sunday. Come past, pick me up, and then we would go home. 2 DJs in the same car. 2 friends. Thanks, Brad. Never forget that shit. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. And I worked with amazing people, and all I ever did was learn and learn and learn. And then at one stage, a good friend of mine, Raul Leja, he got ill. He didn't get ill, excuse me. He was in a car accident. And he was out of action for about 7 to 8 months, if I recall. And they needed someone to stand in for Raul. Raul basically worked in what we call traffic. Now, traffic is not what you think. It's not the verkeers bangvas op die N2 kind of traffic. No, traffic is a traffic scheduler. And a traffic scheduler is the one who's responsible for the adverts, which is the reason why stations exist, because that's how they make their money. And while I was there, I also, by the way, when I was at KFM, I was taught a lesson by Arinda. I used to come in back then, we used to sign our checks. I used to do my show, leave, come in to get my check and in the finance department, and go and cash it at the FNB or wherever the case may be, etc., etc., etc. And then one day I had a conversation with Arinda. She was on air or something, and she said to me, you're doing something wrong, Baydu. She said, you can't be doing your show on a weekend and then just popping in here once a month. She says, you've got to be here more often. You've got to show people your face. You've got to talk to people so that people remember you, so that you are top of mind. You're the new guy. No one really knows you. I'll never forget that advice. I took that advice. When I eventually bought myself a cheap little Golf, I would make a plan once, maybe twice per week, if not less or more, to pop in at the station, go and speak to everybody, not just the DJs, pop in at the newsroom, have a conversation in the newsroom, go to the programming department, technical department, marketing department, finance department, PR, everybody, just have a chat to everybody and stuff like that. And that is one of the biggest reasons why I was actually top of mind. And all of a sudden, when certain DJs couldn't be available for a photo shoot, I would get the phone call. And I know Jackie's on my Facebook. Jackie used to be one of those, used to be our receptionist. Baydu, you're available. We need, there's the Argus or the Cape Times is going to be at blah, blah, blah primary. We need you to pose with kids or whatever. Of course I'm keen. I'm going to be in the paper. I'm representing one of the biggest radio stations in the country, or in Cape Town, excuse me. And I used to do that. I also used to just become friendly with everybody, become friends with everyone, and to the point where it was just like, hey, where's Baydu when you're at a function, as opposed to being that quiet, person in the corner. And that's another lesson for those who are getting into this field. You may have an amazing voice, and you may be amazing on air and be fabulous on social media and whatever, but if you're not a people's person, then this job, unfortunately, is not really for you. You are not going to succeed completely. A lot of people have, because they're introverts. A lot of radio people are actually introverted. But it is so important for you to just go out there and grab the opportunity. Go and speak to clients. Hi, I'm Baydu. What's your name? Have a conversation. Go and speak to people you work with. Go into the community, and it's an outside broadcast. Chat to people, high five them, back then when you could high five them. And all those kinds of things. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned from Arinda, about, just being around so that people can see you. So I started doing that. And that led to firstly, when Raul got ill, for me to stand in for Raul. Because at this stage, I've now become friends with Raul, and I've learned how to do the system easy. So there was only myself and Raul. No one else could do it. Only later, a lady called Debbie Oosthuizen, who's a big friend of mine. And I mean big like that, Debbie. I mean, she's a big friend of mine. She used to work at the SABC back in the good old days, with the guys like Lee Downs or whatever, when they were still at good old. Brilliant radio lady. She's left the industry. She's left commercial radio to start her own business and whatever. But one of the most respected brains in the country. She joined us afterwards, and I kind of work with her. So she joined us afterwards, and between her and myself and Raul, we would kind of do stuff, especially when I would stand in. And then when Raul got sick, got in the accident, I used to do all those kinds of stuff, blah, blah, blah. So I was now working for, I think it was actually 10 months. Maybe it was, I don't think it was 6 months. I think it was 10 months as Raul was completely out. It was a bad accident. And I then worked Monday through to Friday, office hours. Now, Friday, when you're doing traffic, you normally end up 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock leaving, because you have to schedule. What happens is you schedule the adverts a day ahead, right? But if it's Friday, you need to schedule until Monday, because when you come in Monday, the ads must be playing. So you literally got to schedule Saturday, Sunday, and Monday stuff. So when you come in on Monday, you schedule for Tuesday, but kind of stuff. So you work late, whatever. And then that used to happen every Friday. And then I had to go home, chill for a few hours, come back and do my show. And then again the Saturday, I was beyond. But it was the experience that I gained, and it was a small way of starting to put away some cash that I could put away, being from a poor family, which wasn't always the case. You know, when you're poor, you can't put away any cash. And people always like, yeah, but if you had so much money, if you don't have any money, why are you wearing Nikes? They're wearing Nikes because that's the only thing they can save up for. That 2,000 Rand techies. There's nothing. What else? You can't tell a kid to save up 2,000 Rand in 3 years and then put it away in a bond. He's not going to see it. He wants to look fly and enjoy life. So stop that. And then so Raul, and then because I was there in the building, Clive Ridgway, who eventually became program manager after Kevin Savage left. Clive Ridgway, by the way, is also the guy that started Smile FM in Cape Town when they launched. And who, by the way, offered me a job, and I kind of turned it down because I was doing other projects. Love Smile, though. It's not before Algoa, by the way. And then Clive called me. No, it wasn't Clive. Clive and Justine Kemlo, who was the music compiler back then. And they needed someone to tag their CDs, and I tagged, because you basically have to, if back then it was CDs, so if it's UB40, it'll be UB1, and the other CD is UB2, and you got to write the name of the CD, like everything was on a computer system basically, but you needed a system to put it on the computer system. That's where Baydu came in. And I remember they asked me, and of course I said yes. And they asked another guy, and at one stage they came to me and said, like, your work is 2 to 3 times faster than this other guy, so we're just going to ask you. Again, it was not trying to outshine the other person. It was just, I needed to be seen because I needed it. I needed everything that I worked for. I needed it at that moment. I was passionate about it. I did not want to let this go. It was going to be my life. I decided that years ago, and it has become my life. And I pushed and I pushed and I gave my bloody all. So I ended up doing those kinds of things, and then I asked to do anything else, and I started doing odd jobs for the department, besides being a DJ, etc. And then in walks in our new MD, a colored lady called Felicia Roman, who's one of my best friends right now. I think Felicia changed the game, because, and a lot of people are not going to agree with me on this, but when the country changed, and when I say country changed, we all know what we're talking about. Felicia was the colored lady from Grassy Park who used to be a teacher, and she brought that with her. And there's in radio you have a lot of consortiums, and one of the consortiums, which was a colored Cape Flats consortium, pushed her to be the MD. And yes, there would have been issues with the old management and the new management, but the one thing I can say about Felicia is that she believed in me, and she believed in the things I did. And if it wasn't for that lady, I wouldn't have been pushed even harder to do even better. So anyway, so fast forward to a day when Felicia's there and Clive Ridgway's there, and they call me into their office. So I'm like, okay, what's this all about? And this is now years after I've been doing all these odd jobs and doing Raul's job and Raul's back, and helping out where I can. I started producing stuff for the breakfast show. There was one of 2 people at KFM back then who would do, we call it shadow. When there's an outside broadcast, there's somebody in the studio. There were only 2 people who did that. It was myself and the manager called Yaku Falyun, good buddy of mine. There was only 2 of us who did breakfast show and afternoon drive show, because back then at KFM, dude, it was ads upon ads. This is sponsored, that's sponsored. You've got to think 10 feet, 10 steps ahead all the freaking time. And you've got to prepare things that the DJ wants out there. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. and Yaku and I were the only two who used to do that. So I used to do things like that as well. I used to, being into production and stuff, I used to produce back then when Bobby came. I can't remember if Bobby left for KFM or if Bobby went into the newsroom. I think that is what happened. I think Bobby left for Cape Talk afterward. And I had to do the top 10 at 10. When I say I had to do it, I mean Bobby had to do it, but we pre-recorded it, so it wasn't live. So Bobby was recorded, then we did a thing with Dion Bing, who obviously a lot of you know, who's been on KFM for a million years, and then moved to Aiden in the morning as well. And Dion used to do his thing as well. I think it was on a Sunday, and I used to put that all together. So they would record their voices, I would play their voices, and I would add the songs and the adverts and stuff in between. I had to make a copy on the CD, so you press play on the computer the same time you press play on the CD. In case the computer messes up, you just lift up the CD, and there's all behind the scene tricks. But these are all the kinds of things I used to do, and which I was proud of, because it was an integral part of the station and the station's success. And they called me in, the two of them, the two big bosses, and they had a bit of a chat, and then they said, Baydu, we'd like to offer you a job, a permanent job here, as the programming manager's assistant. Without hesitation, I said yes. I said yes because I knew I was working as a presenter with huge names. When I moved over to KFM, Nigel Pearce joined, Graham White joined. There was guys like Ravon Smith. There was guys like Alan Barnard, Nick Murray, Benito Vergatini, Sam Roy, Mebu Power. It was just huge names, and I knew I was unable to compete with these guys unless one of them got another job offer or somebody moved away. There would have been a gap, and I could have maybe sort of have been given, a slot. So I said yes immediately, because it is what I wanted to do. It's what I always wanted to do, and that was the start of that. I became Clive Ridgway's programming assistant for a very long time. We shared Clive's office. I had my own office, and Justine had her office, and the fourth was like where the music was. So we were programming, and I learned a lot from Clive. And I must be honest, a lot of people don't like his style of radio. But back then, Clive was, let's be honest, he invented a fairly new style, or had a different approach to radio, which worked back then. And if I might just add here, whether it was us as presenters, whether it was us as a brand, whether it was us marketing and PR, whether it was us now starting a website, whether it was Felicia Roman, or whether it was Clive Ridgway, we just kept on growing and growing and growing. All KFM, when I was there, all we ever wanted to do was to beat the number one station, which was Good Hope FM. And back then, Good Hope FM had 700 to 800,000 listeners, 800 odd. It was a lot. I joined, I always get this figure wrong. I can't recall if I joined when there were 300 odd thousand or 500 odd thousand, but I remember each time those results came out, it just grew exponentially. We celebrated with, back then it was Randmark, they are now called Media Mark, I think, so they sell advertising for radio stations, especially nationally. So for those who don't know, when you have a commercial radio station, you've got a local sales team. So let's say for us, for example, here at Talgo FM, we've got local people who sell for us in the Eastern Cape, including East London, and then we've got someone selling for us in George and Knysna and the Western Cape, because that's where we broadcast to. And then we've got national clients, so your MTNs and Vodacoms and those FNBs and those kinds of things. Anyway, so I remember they came that day, Radmark came that day, all the ladies from the agency, and there was champagne and stuff, not that I drink, but there was champagne and stuff. We just hit the 1 million mark. It was unheard of in my lifetime. Again, remembering, and I can't, if it was 300 or 500,000, is when I joined, 540,000 or 380,000, whatever. We hit 1 million listeners. 1 million people in Cape Town was listening to us. And it's one of my biggest achievements that I'm so proud of, because I was a part of that. Whether on air or behind the scenes, I was part of that team that took it to 1 million. It kept on growing. We eventually, I think the first time we celebrated was when we beat Good Hope, and we had 800,000, and then we had 900,000, and then it was 1 million. The highest that station was ever at, and I don't think they've ever reached that numbers, was when I was there. We took it to 1.289 million listeners. That is 11,000 short of 1.3 million listeners. So severe say, I don't think it's ever been done before. I mean, done again, sorry. 1289 was the highest it's ever reached. I remember when Prime Media took over KFM. Prime Media owns 94.7 and 702 and Cape Talk. It took them 7 years apparently or something to buy the station. When they took it over, one of the guys came there and said he's there to take it to 1.5 million. And I don't think they've ever taken it to over 1.289 million, but I digress. So that was another proud moment in my radio career, having hit the million mark and having hit the 1.289. I'll never forget that number. I will absolutely never forget that number. We beat Good Hope FM. We were number one. We were Cape Town's number one. We just beat Good Hope FM. And then as time went by, P4 changed a bit to Heart FM. I think P4 didn't really have the numbers because they were typically a jazz station, which is what their license was for. They changed their license, then they applied for another license to become sort of adult contemporary station, which is why you're listening to the way they sound now. And they're no longer known as P4. They're now known as Heart. I could be wrong, but I think 100 or 300 was the ceiling they used to hit in listenership. Now with the last few years, they hit 1 million, and I think 800,000. So it's between KFM and Heart basically in Cape Town, sharing the number one and two spots, and then Good Hope is third, and then places like Smile and everyone else comes afterwards. So yeah, that was basically my journey at in the radio and how I got to where I was. When Prime Media took over, it was just a different setup to what I was used to. It honestly wasn't for me, but I still kept on learning as much as I could from that organization. And within a very short time after that, all my friends started jumping ship. They just left. They didn't want to work, for the station. I still stayed on for a bit until eventually I decided to leave. And that is another long story that I can tell you. Yeah. And when I left, I had absolutely no job. And this is the other lesson, is that, my dad always says, die geld kom nie van die mens nie, die geld kom van bo. Die geld meaning rizik, which means your blessing. Die rizik kom van bo. And I've always firmly believed that. Twice in my life, I jumped jobs without having another job. This was the first time. When on leaving, I think an hour after I sent, it was less than an hour after the email was sent out that I'm leaving, Heart FM phoned me. The program manager back then was Vernon Adams, who used to work with me in the same space at Prime Media, because he was at Cape Talk, he was on air and he was a producer, etc. Excuse me. And he said, I want you to come and work for me. I'm like, dude, I just need a break. It was like October, November or something. I said, I think it was November. I said, just give me 2 months. I need a break from radio. I've been doing radio for a very long time. I love it and I'm passionate about it, but I just need a break. I remember going away to Durban for a couple of days and just relaxing and stuff. And he said to me, okay, cool. I'll phone you in the first week of Jan, my first Monday in Jan or whatever. And the first Monday in Jan, 8 o'clock, there, Vernon phones. And he wants me to come for an interview. And that was that, man. I left with nothing. And there was another option. And from radio, my career has been one of people looking for me, offering me jobs, as opposed to me having to look for a job. And that I'm grateful and thankful for as well. It's just the industry that I'm in. It's just such a small industry. So this is just the case, and this is just how it is. When I left to go to Heart, I had an absolutely amazing time. I was the producer of the breakfast show. I remember day one, Vernon introduced me to the team. It was Margie to fix, it was Lee Downs, and it was Jeremy Harris. So I quickly just introduced, and then I left and whatever. And then my first day on to come and work now officially, I had to be there fairly early. So I met up with Lee Downs. So I'm the first one there with him. And I'm sitting there having a chat, and he says to me, just hold on, just answer there quickly. And he shoves the mic in my face. And he asks me a question, or he makes a statement, and I respond. And I could see, Lee, I saw this. I could see the glint in his eye. I was like, this guy, nah, he's going to work. And we've had an amazing relationship at Heart FM in the breakfast show. It was one of the best breakfast shows I've ever experienced. I think a lot of people still miss that energy we had. Eventually, Jeremy left us to go to to go to KFM with Ryan, and Paul Snodgrass joined us, and then Margarita left, and Sarah B. Cohen joined us. And Sarah also used to work with me, or in the same building as I did. She used to work at Cape Talk, and then she got a job in Jerusalem, Israel, and then came back and joined us and whatever. So fabulous newsreaders like Leanne, two Leannes, was it three Leannes? There was three Leannes always working there. Leanne de Bassompierre and Leanne, who's now Leanne Adams, and then Unity as well. And there's so many other people that I work with that had such an amazing time at Heart. I think if anyone should ever ask me which radio station I enjoyed most of working at, as in commercial radio stations, because I worked at community radio stations, I worked at online radio stations, I worked at internet radio stations, I worked at retail radio stations as well, sorry. And I would say that Heart, because of the music. It's not always that you work at a radio station where you thoroughly, completely enjoy the music 100%. And Heart's music is because I grew up. I'm a coloured boy from Mitchell's Bay in Cape Town, from the Cape Flats, and this is the kind of music we grew up with. And Heart, basically, if you think about it, Heart is basically an extension of Good Hope, because all of us that used to listen to Good Hope when we were younger have now matured and we're older. We're 20 years older than what or even 30 years older than what we used to be. We used to listen to Good Hope when it was a young station. So when you're playing as a symbol on an old school song, of course we're going to love it, because that's the kind of stuff we grew up with, Then one day we were told by another radio stations guy that our team is in Joburg, not for a meeting, but they are there to meet a presenter. And this presenter's name is Machota, Fat Joe, as you know. Once everything has been signed, management decided to hold me as the producer, and they moved Nick Feinberg and Julian with Fat Joe to the breakfast, and moved my entire team to the afternoon drive show. So that happened for about, I think I was with Joe for about a year or less. Lovely guy, lovely radio brain, knows his things, always pushing the envelope, obviously, because that's his style and his personality and persona. I personally I started feeling this wasn't going to work for Cape Town for a couple of reasons, which I wasn't really necessarily to state here, but I just felt like I don't think this is the right fit. When we had the older show with someone like Lee and Sarah or Margarita and Snoddy and Jeremy even, we had I think breakfast shows, in my opinion, my humble opinion, I think breakfast shows almost need to represent, each person represents not just a group, but represents a story, represents an angle, and just represents something, brings something to the party that people listen out for, listen to, aspire to, are fans of. And I think with our breakfast show, you had Lee Downs, who was this, Lee is technically a freaking master. Songs are smooth, his vocals, and the song kicks in, and the drop-ins, which is like Heart FM, and then the song starts, like he's absolute perfect in that. He knows his music, and this is the one thing about Lee and I, I grew up listening to Lee and those guys like Clarence and whatever when I was a kid, and Dimitri Jagels, listening to Good Hope. So we knew the same music, and that was always our kind of connection, And Lee was the leader in the team. He was like the guy who's trying to be funny, but he's not funny. He was the mature guy. He knew radio. He knew clients. Here's a weird story about Lee. When we dropped listeners in our show at one stage, it was the first time in Lee's career that he dropped listeners. He's never, I don't know how long Lee was on air, 20 years or something. He's never, ever dropped listeners. It's always picked up. And that was the first time he dropped listeners. Look, there's various reasons why things happen. People, situations change and there's more things to listen, more radio stations to listen to now. People started listening to music on the MP3s and blah, 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 whatever. But I'm just, as a weird story. So that was Lee. Then we had, if you look at Margarita, she was the outspoken female voice, and everybody loved that. Sarah was similar. She was the female voice. Sarah was also very artsy, very creative, very thespian, very like art, as in on the stage. When she has to be, could also be very ditzy when she doesn't know about stuff, and that worked. And then you had Paul Snodgrass, who's a comedian, and he knows about movies. He's a geek. All of those kinds of things was his thing. Jeremy again was similar. He was like always this, I think I'm cool, but I'm not really cool, but I think I'm cool. And chicks dig me, but they don't. That kind of vibe. And he knew his sport, obviously, because he's a sports guy. And also a wealth of knowledge in radio. And then there was me. By the way, my program manager more than once asked me to stop speaking. I don't know why, because it worked. And Cape Town absolutely loved the shit that Baydu used to speak, but just like, I don't want you to speak anymore, you're a producer. And we used to have this fights, I would never fight. I was like, okay. And then the fight would happen in studio when Lee's like, why are you not answering? Why are you not saying anything? And I'm like, but my program manager said I shouldn't speak. Talk to him. Screw him. Talk. That kind of a thing. So I think the dynamic of a breakfast show, most breakfast shows, all breakfast shows are the same. The dynamic has to happen, has to work. And I think for me, with that team, there was just that chemistry that everybody just fitted in with everybody else. We started finishing each other's sentences. We were literally 4 people sitting on a Musubi couch talking cack or talking serious issues, and there was 500 or whatever, hundreds, thousands of people listening to us. That's basically what we were, and that's what the breakfast show should be. That is exactly what a breakfast show should be like. You shouldn't feel the pressure. There are not many lessons I learned from a lot of program managers, but one of the lessons I did learn from the one guy is where he said, you are not the expert and you don't have to be the expert. If you're interviewing some expert, just ask him the layman questions. Just don't need to, oh no, I read your book and in chapter 13 verse, no, just ask the questions. The people who are listening don't want to hear these long, highfalutin words and whatever. Just ask the freaking questions. Is it going to work or not? Is it working for me or not? Is it worth my while or not? Is it expensive or not? Do I send my kids or not? That's all they need to hear. So anyway, so then that was that. And then when my daughter came, again, him and I, we had a very good relationship. There were some issues that happened, but I think these issues was a culmination of a lot of stuff. It wasn't just a personal thing. It was at the stage when I started feeling, I won't say I was unhappy, because I wasn't. I really loved working at Heart. And Heart's audience is such an amazing audience. I don't think you'll ever find a better audience than Heart's audience. We went, my first time I went was their second birthday. It was raining for days. And on the Saturday morning, we had to go to, what is that place called? Elgin or Grabo for our bash, where Claire Phillips and Chad Simon and all these guys were performing, whatever. Man, dat het gereën en daar was 8,000 mensen. It's ridiculous as dit daar geweest. 4,000 or whatever. And it was raining. People were dancing, literally dancing in the rain. And I just thought, you had to get up from your house on the Cape Flats or the suburbs, wherever, drive for like an hour in the rain, get to the area in the rain, unpack your picnic basket and dance in the rain, and they did it. So that's what I always say, their listeners are the most hardcore. And a lot of those listeners are on my Facebook, so thank you guys for the support. Thanks for always being there. Thanks for always listening to my cut that I used to speak. Oh, I didn't talk about me. So Baydu as the producer, I played the role of that annoying guy when you're a 16-year-old girl and you're going on your first date, and I'm that little brother that has to go with. That was Baydu, that annoying guy. Baydu was also the guy that would just say the most rubbish, and the reaction from the DJs or the sidekicks or the guys on the show would just be like, what? Or like, oh dear. Or can somebody just shut this guy up? Whatever the reaction was, it was a natural reaction. And I think that worked. I'm very much, and I've always been a person to know when to cut, to know when to stop. That is another key for those who are watching this in radio. Don't keep on going. Don't think, oh, they love me, they love me. No. Don't ever think that people love you and they love your voice. No. Think about, I think in my head that I've spoken about enough, let's move on. And I think that is what I used to do with the show. That's how I used to shape the show as a producer. I had free reign to do and say whatever I wanted, which could either go in that direction, or they would tell me like, no, shut up, we're busy talking here. and they would continue with their conversation. But it just brought a different dynamic. It was childish to a degree, but Baydu was the same person that could talk about a 3-month-old girl being raped and be serious about it and having people listen to it. And that is it. And I always tell my jocks at Algo FM and at other stations that I worked at, I always tell my jocks to find that balance. And if you're a radio person, try and always find that balance. You don't have to have a stance all the time. You don't have to be pro or anti. You don't have to push the same agenda, whether you love animals or whether you love concrete or whether you love food or whatever. It doesn't have to be the same stuff all the time. Today you can love spaghetti. Tomorrow you can love freaking cake, whatever. Just find the balance, because out there are people who are listening to you, or either liking you or they're hating you. That's one. There's no kind of sort of in between. Okay. They either like you or they hate you. They like, oh, can't stand this jock. And that's a lot of questions I get asked, like, oh, how is, when you start in the industry, oh, how is, like, and I place person's name here, they're like, he's normal, like, what else? I don't understand the question. So eventually I made up my mind that I needed a break from there. I needed to try my own things. And it is one of the biggest leaps I've taken in my life. So the first time I left without a job was when I left KFM. The second time was this time. My program manager, because how it works in radio, you have to sign, as a freelance contractor, you have to sign a contract with it's a month, 3 months, or 12 months, or 24 months, or 3 years, whatever the case may be. You have to sign and re-sign your contract. And we all basically worked on the same date. So let's call it 1st of April or whatever. And it was weeks leading up to, let's call it the 1st of April, where I needed to re-sign my contract. And they get to pay, we bring us your contract, we need to see, whatever. And then just before it was time to sign my contract, I just made up my mind that this is not what I wanted to do anymore. It was nothing to do really with heart. It was nothing to do with the people. It had everything to do with me. I think I've grown. I grew a lot. And in my head, I was always 10 steps behind because of my situation, where I came from and what I've experienced and stuff. In my head, I now have enough to go on, to stand my own man and go and work for any other radio station, or be involved in a team, and have programming background and have producer background and sound engineering background, to find a job. And when I left, I had nothing. I just said, no, guys, I'm not going to send them an email or whatever. I'm not going to resign. Thanks so much for the opportunity, but I'm out. It's not going to work for me. I then left as a producer. I think Mel Jones, a friend of mine, joined afterwards, and then another buddy of mine, Grant Jansen, he's still the producer there now. I think there was somebody else before Grant, I can't remember. But yeah, Grant is still there now with Aiden and Jules and Tefs. Lovely people, lovely radio station. So, but coming back to me, when I left, it was just my opportunity to start doing stuff. And I remember I was one of the very few people that used social media to push my website, because then I started a website. And just to backtrack, when I wrote all these stupid statuses and stuff, because my mind works in a creative way, one of my closest friends, and a very creative friend, said to me, dude, you need your own website. What? It ended up me asking people on Facebook, does anybody know of anybody that can develop a website and whatever. And there were two guys, I tracked them down. They did a song. They were known as the NPA Project. And they did was it Zoom, Zoom, Zoom? Maybe you heard that, boom, 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 and they turned to doom, 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 whatever. I tracked them down, we interviewed them, and then one of these guys said, hey, you should check with our guy. He did our website, here's an example. But met with the guy, told him exactly what I wanted, and he made me the website. And since then, Baydu.co.za started, and I started pushing as much content in there as possible. I did lots of firsts, but it was such a small scale that not many people know these kinds of things. And on my website, when I wrote my very first blog, I wrote the blog and I was so proud of it, and I was about to present, and I just thought, this blog, my intention was to target the colored market, unashamedly. But for me, when I read the blog, it was too colored. It was too, we call it SEM, or it used to be LSM back in the day. It was too lower LSM. understand that there are different types of people in the world and people have different kinds of money. And my question was, do I want to target the people and get a whole lot of people reading my blog because I'm Yahweh, my bro? Or do I want the intellectual people with the money and who do things that I do and better and who aspire to do better stuff? I rewrote that entire blog and then I pressed send. Within the first year, I was nominated for Essay Blog Awards. For a few years, I've received Essay Blog Awards, runner-up award, and 1 year I received the blog award for, I think it was, what was it for now again, lifestyle, or there's a lifestyle award and there's another award, entertainment, I think is the other one. So I received that award, which was quite a cool thing for me to have happened within like the space of a few years. I unashamedly, like I said, I kind of pushed the just pieces off. And like I said, I unashamedly kind of like pushed the Cape Coloured and Cape Flats angle, but on a professional level. And I did what I needed to do. I mean, all of a sudden people were giving me all of a sudden people were giving me things to give away. They were giving away tickets and clothing and stuff like that, I was invited to a lot of things. So the website opened a lot of stuff for me. And I remember when I worked in radio, whenever there's like, let's call it the Stormers game, and then there's, guys, we only have 4 sets of tickets, and there's like 80 of us, and whoever, his name gets drawn gets the tickets, or the same people go and you can't go. And I remember sitting there once, representing Baydu.co.za, watching a Stormers game, and I just went, I'm sitting here because of my freaking website. So another lesson here, don't give up on your dreams and your hopes. The website for me was also a big thing. I still have my website. I need to just rejig it a bit and redo it and then get back into it again, because I'm not populating it as much as I should. I actually started the website, to be honest, to start my own online radio show many years ago. So that's another thing that could maybe happen one day when I decide to leave commercial radio and start my own online radio station. But yeah, so then that happened. I got, from the money that I got, I started creating no, I'm lying. With me leaving the radio station, I met up with a friend of mine and I started doing odd little things all over the show. And one of the things we came up with was I registered an events company which was doing fairly okay. And one of my biggest clients was Capitec Bank, so I still have huge respect for Capitec for believing in me and helping me out. The same with City of Cape Town, who also believed in me. And one day, just to come back to another project that I started. So one day, at this stage, I'm not living in Plumstead, I'm living on my own. I go to my parents' place, I see this girl that lives in the road, and she was this small when I saw her. Now she's like 13 or 14, and she was pregnant, and it just broke my heart. I was like, yeah, I am pushing everything to change the situation I'm in. And this girl's pregnant, that's the situation of the people that I live with in the area that I live with, that kind of thing. And I spoke to my friend about it, and the next thing I said, I wish there was something I could do. So she whips out a pen and paper, she's like, let's do something. And I'm, what are you talking about? So we came up with 13 topics, and we decided then and there we're going to have a life skills series for grade 11s from the Cape Flats and Townships. And we are going to talk about these 13 issues. So we called it 13 hours. That's where 13 hours was born. It was a lovely project that again led to other things and other things and other things. But we had 350 kids once a month on a Saturday, driven with buses to the City of Cape Town's council chambers, where Auntie Helen and Auntie Pat used to have their speeches. And, all the sound equipment, these projectors, we had professional singers and actors. We interviewed people just about stuff like, what do you do when you get to church? Let me tell you the story quickly. So the very first one I had was very much a hoo-ha, big fanfare, lots of famous people. The Aidan Thomases of the world was there, and the Wayne McKays, and and they opened it up with it's got talent drum kids. They were all there, and it was lekker. And then the second one was about tertiary education. So there's all grade 11s, remember? We arranged for all the tertiary educations in and around the Western Cape, so UWC, UCT, Cape Tech, CPUT, those kind of stuff, even online studies or whatever. And we only had an hour. So what happens is each one gets a moment to speak. They speak. When they're done, kids ask questions. So in this instance, I said, no, let's wait till everyone's done speaking, then we're going to ask questions. It was about 22 when everybody was done with it, or quarter to, 22, quarter to. And the kids' hands just went up and up and up and up and up, and everybody was just asking questions. And eventually it's like, guys, it's 20 past your time now. Your buses are waiting. You have to go. And then eventually it was like half past, and I'm sorry. So I said, I'm sorry, guys. We have to leave now. What, maybe, if you have a question for a specific person, somebody from Stellenbosch, go to that person. If you have a question for somebody from UCT, go to that person. I swear to God, those kids all rushed to all those people. And that's when I realized kids are hungry for this. And kids were hungry to learn back then. And kids were hungry to get the information from people. And I think that is why that events company was such a successful one, especially when it came around with kids and stuff like that. And so shout out to my friend Babungili for doing that. So I did that, and then another point of story, because I used to like blogging and writing and stuff. So I go to Cubana one night, and a lady that I met, Lauren Kansley, was the editor at The Voice, the Daily Voice at the stage. And when I met her, I don't know, she became something else. And then she says to me, I met her at Cubana that one night, and she says to me, hey man, we were thinking of you maybe writing about idols for us. Don't you want to? I said, okay, cool. No problem. I remember that Monday was a holiday, or we just did. So it was a Saturday. So I leave, now you leave Cubana at like 3 a.m. or whatever. And I go to a 24-hour cafe. I think I left after 4. I left that cafe at 6 o'clock. I wrote a blog about idols and whatever, blah, blah, as a sample that I'm now going to send to the Daily Voice and see what they, what they think and what they say. So I wrote it, and I sent it off. They printed it in the paper. I was like, what's going on here? It's supposed to be a sample. Do you mind writing another one for Thursday? And please come in tomorrow. We want to talk to you. And then they started paying me for it. And another example of your passion. I love writing, but I firmly believe, and a lot of people agree with me, and I'm probably wrong, but I don't necessarily write the way we were taught to write, because I have a bit of a problem with it, because a lot of the times that's not how we speak. That's not how we grew up. And you'll notice, if you see lots of my statuses on Facebook, for example, I speak the way we speak, not necessarily sensei. I don't necessarily mornings, necessarily type it the way that the correct way is. So, and I know people have a problem with it, but I don't, because that's how I speak. That's how we speak. Anyway. So they called me in. I sat there with the editor, and I said to him, listen, dude, like, thank you so much, and blah, blah, and then they're going to pay me for it, whatever. And I said, please just don't ask me to change my writing style. And he's like, no problem, that's cool. No, okay. Please don't, no, that's cool. Everything I asked for, they agreed to, and I wrote, I think it was 4 months or so, I wrote for the tabloid. It was, I won't forget, it was the year that Elvis Blue and Lloyd Taylor joined, somebody won, and then they shared their money or whatever. It was that year that I wrote for them. Also, within the States, this is now me hustling, trying to make ends meet. I got a job at Tritanga Junction Radio, which I absolutely loved. I was guest lecturing about radio. Damnon was one of the places I went to. There was another college I went to in town, where people were studying broadcasting or journalism and stuff like that, which is another place where I realized that because I'm so passionate about my industry, that I love, giving over the advice about the industry, which is why my project started by Clive Ridgway back in the day. He did it the first year at KFM, and the second year I ran with it, and then I ran with it every year. And when I came to Algoa, I started doing it here, which is the Youth Day project, because I love just, teaching people about my industry. It's an amazing industry, it really is. People only see the sexy thing, they only see the 10 DJs or the 5 DJs, they don't know there's 70, 80, 100 people working behind the scenes, which there normally is. So yeah, I did that. I did lots of stuff, basically. And then here's my sad story. So a lot of things also started not working for me. When I left KFM, I just bought my first property. It was a flat, and I had it for, I think it was a year or less. And then my job was gone. Anyway, then as time went by, my tenants were paying on time. Blah, blah. Then my tenants started not paying on time. 2 days, 3 days later. Then my tenants stopped paying. It was a whole big thing, and I should have, if I had the heart, just thrown them out. I didn't. So that started happening, and I was hustling everywhere. I was wherever I could, if I could write a piece here, I was paid for doing certain blogs. Woolworths was another client I used to write for. I was doing the Retanga thing. I was guest lecturing in radio. I was making some money off my events company. I was emceeing gigs. I was doing voiceovers. Whatever I could do, I was just literally hustling. And one day, I'll never forget the story. One day, one of the clients who needed me to arrange something for them, I needed to phone the client, and I only had 3 rand left in my bank account. I had 3 rand and something left in my bank account, and I needed to make this phone call. I needed to transfer that 3 rand over to my phone so that I could make this phone call, and that was it. I had absolutely no money. I remember timing myself, switching on the timer, because I know there's that beep sound that comes, I think, a minute before you get cut off or whatever. And I switched the timer on the moment I heard the beep. So I was like, hey, how's it? You well? Cool, now, lekker. Listen, don't forget this and that. And what do you need from me? Okay, cool. Okay, I'll email you that. And this is just me, and that beep sound happens. And my last few words were something like, please don't forget to send me the cash, because obviously we used to work with, like, send me 50% upfront or money to pay for the hall or whatever, send me the cash and blah, 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 whatever. And then I said, so I really got to go. There's another call coming through. I'll check you later. Okay, bye. And my phone died. And that was it. I had no money. I had absolutely no money. All the hustles, all the trying to get out there, it wasn't working. I don't regret it at all, because it taught me to hustle. I forced myself into that situation. I wasn't forced to now all of a sudden, oh my God, remember. I left my job because I wanted to do something different. I had all this radio experience now, but I felt like I didn't want that to be the only thing that I've got. I started this blogging website that won awards. I started guest lecturing in radio. I started this events company. I started this whole thing with writing for the Daily Voice. I did all of those kinds of things, and I grew as a person doing all of those kinds of things. And I was used to being not so much under pressure, because things was always working out well. And I forced myself to work under pressure, and I started running out of cash, and I had to keep on coming up with new concepts and ideas, like to keep on, hustling. I hustled like a mother. I hustled, guys. And that's why I say, when a lot of these things didn't work out, I ended up with 3 rand odd in my banking account, which I eventually lost after a phone call. But then I got the money back after the event and stuff like that. And it was at the time that I was at my lowest, in the sense of, because I don't really get depressed and stuff like that. But I always said to myself, I'm going to give myself 3 years before I get back into radio. And it was literally just under 3 years it was. And I get this phone call from who's now my boss in Port Elizabeth, and the rest, as they say, is history. They flew me up. Oh, there's another story here. So, so at this stage, most of the management at Heart FM have left, and there's new management, etc., etc. I bumped into who's now the MD of Heart. I bumped into her, the ex-MD, and another guy who's also I've also learned to respect as a radio head. 3 of them, and they was at the Baxter. So she's like, a Baydu, and the guy is, oh, you're Baydu, and introduced himself. So now they know who I am, and chat. And so when I get this phone call from Port Elizabeth, and it says, listen, we would like to offer you something. I think it was a Thursday. Yes, it was the Thursday. So I said, sure. Don't you want to just give me until the weekend? Let me just think about it. Can I give you an answer on Monday? Would that be okay? 8 o'clock? He's like, no, sure, no. After alarm comes, no, sure, no. I met this guy, my boss, Alfie, when I was still working at Heart, and we had this radio conference with different radio stations come together, breakfast show producer, afternoon drive show producer, and the program manager, and we would just come up with ideas and concepts and share stuff. That's also where I met Fat Joe for the first time. Was working at Kaya FM. Anyway, so that's where I met Alfie, and so I met him all 5 minutes or 3 minutes or so. So we spoke, and he's like, now cool, we agreed Monday. So now I'm over the moon, but also I'm going to have to leave my hometown now. I'm Cape Town's #1 fan. Like, I've never worked outside of Cape Town, And same day, I get an email from Hart's secretary saying, hey, the MD would like to meet with you. I think he's got an offer for you. I've been at home this long. No one's phoned me. Today, 2 radio stations phoned me. Come on, what are the odds? And then the next day, the guy, Alfie, phones me. He's like, hey, you ready? I was like, no, Alfie, we said Monday. Oh, sure, but I forgot. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so then that afternoon, actually, it wasn't that, it was the next day, when that email came through. And I said to Alfie, I phoned him. I said, I'm so sorry to do this, but I've just been given some sort of an offer from Hart. And I don't want to leave my hometown to come to Port Elizabeth. And then there's the similar offer here, blah, blah, blah. And, you don't uproot your whole life now to go. And for me, luckily, this is why I have so much respect for Alfie J, is that he was like, no, that's cool. Like, I understand. Like, just take your time. And his last words were, I hope they don't offer you one. I hope you don't get the job, kind of a thing, Anyway, so the email just basically said that he would like to meet with me on, I think, I'm gonna call it Tuesday. So I said to Alfie, I'm gonna meet. No, I think it was Wednesday. I said, I'm so sorry, but I know I was gonna give you an answer by Monday, but now this guy's also we can meet on Wednesday at 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock. Let's call it 10 o'clock. When I'm done, when I walk out the building, I'll phone you. I'll tell you I've accepted their offer, or I'll tell you I haven't accepted the offer. I'm coming to PE. No, that's cool, whatever. And that was the agreement. The Tuesday or whatever comes, and I get an email from the secretary, and the secretary says, hey man, sorry, the MD is really busy. Do you mind if we postpone this to Friday? And I'm like, nah, that's a sign. So immediately I phoned, I got the MD's number from Hart back then, and I said, listen, I know you're offering me something, but I'm going to be honest with you. I've just been offered something in Port Elizabeth. I don't want to move if it's, if it's not about money, but it's about moving. It's about taking my whole life and moving to another province, blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, what I was going to offer you is not as great an offer as the Port Elizabeth offer, as in a program manager's job. So if I was you, I'd take it. And I put the phone down. I phoned Alfie J, and I'm like, you can book that flight. I remember they booked the flight. I met with the MD, Alfie, and the HR manager, and whoever, and we had this chat. And one of the questions they asked me was, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I said, sorry, I don't believe in those kind of questions. Because I've sat in meetings where teachers were like, no, in 5 years, I'm hoping to still be at the station, because right now, me and my family, we love the station. We listen 24 hours. And then 2 months later, they go to another station. So I told him that story. And the guy's like, yeah, okay, well, good point. So I said, look, I don't know where this is going to take me. I said, I need the experience. I'm passionate about radio, as you can see. I've started my own companies and stuff. I know how to handle people, those kinds of things. And they saw all of that. And let's see where it goes. So I said, even if I tell you 3 years, would that be okay? And he was like, yeah, cool. And that was that. Anyway, they took me around the building, introduced me to everybody, took me for lunch, came back, and whatever. And the evening, it was now past 5, and my flight was past 6 or something, or 7 o'clock. And the evening, myself and Alfie J were sitting opposite each other, and all we were doing all day is talking radio. That's all we'd speak about. It's radio. It was niks skinder van ander mense nie, and it was just radio. And how I could see me in him, and I think he saw me, a younger me, in him, because it was just about radio. It's all we spoke about. And at one stage, he says, I answered him, he said, just hold that thought. I'm just going to go for a smoke break. And he hands me an envelope. And I'm like, what's this? He said, that's for you. And he goes and smokes. And I opened the envelope, and it's a contract. And it's a contract to work at Alcoa FM. I didn't even look at the contract. I just went to the back where the money was, and I went, okay, this is it. I'm moving to Port Elizabeth. I signed, we shook hands, he took me to the airport, I flew home. On the plane, I remember going, I'm moving to Port Elizabeth. I've never been to PE before. Twice we've planned to come to PE for a road trip with friends, and both times it fell through. And my first time, when I landed at PE, I was like, I was supposed to be here with my friends. I wasn't. I was here for an interview. And here I was, in PE, flying home now. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I have to move my entire life. And within, I think it was a few weeks, I remember having 2 farewells. One had 70 people, one had like 100 people, just to say goodbye to everybody, because I really, everyone knows I'm completely passionate about Cape Town. I absolutely love Cape Town. I love the Cape Flats. But this move, because I am here right now, has been one of the greatest things I've ever done. It absolutely has. I think I'm still blessed that I still get to go home to my family and my friends in Cape Town a lot of the times. But the move to another city, I would recommend that to everybody and anybody, and especially the youngsters, whether it's radio or not. Try it. Just absolutely try it. At first, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. Of course, it's going to be a struggle. My solution to the struggle and the negatives about moving to a city, the first thing you do is don't compare the cities. Don't compare Joburg to Cape Town. Don't compare Durban to B. Don't compare Cape Town to B. Don't. Each city has its own vibe. Each city has its own negatives, and each city has its own positives. Find the positives and enjoy yourself. Meet new people, get to know the place, experience new things, and that's exactly what I've done. I've kind of become the go-to between people who are coming from Cape Town to PE, and I show them around and stuff, which is quite cool, and I like that. Sometimes people stay over at my place because, they can. I'm their connection and stuff now. So I would, again, for the youngsters watching this, I would recommend you absolutely move if you can. I'm not saying to sit down at your house now because you've got issues at home. I'm saying be grounded, understand what you want, what your plan is, and follow it, and don't give up on trying to move. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, you come back home, But give it some time. And like I said, it was absolutely one of the best things I've done. I did it for various reasons, including getting the experience, including I was in financial difficulties, and I'm not shy to say it. I've said it to even my staff and people I work with. Because this video is about trying to encourage people, especially the younger people. I'm trying to encourage you to understand my story and how I got here. So when today somebody comes into the building and says, "Oh my, you've got a nice corner office with a balcony," then inside I go, "Yeah, I worked damn hard for it and I deserve it."